Good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Mikey, good afternoon. Time for another edition of Lead Better, live edition. Glad that everybody's here. And I like to think of this particular field note as one of those. I don't know how it landed for you, Mikey, but when you have, there are some field notes where you would be like, well, yeah, that's a great field note topic. And then there are other ones where when you hear it, you go, well, of course that should be a field note topic. But it had never really occurred to me before that it's even an issue, and yet it is. So the headline is this: be careful not to celebrate yourself when celebrating others. Now, that sounds like a no duh, like what leader would do that? Oh, but then as you look at it, you realize, oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah, and I think the reason that there's a couple different reasons why these types of things hit us in this way. Like the behaviors that we have in our platform, our playbook, that basically tell leaders what to do, are oftentimes accused of being obvious and simplistic and but they are profound. They're interesting. This is a version of one that is a don't do. It's not a do, it's a don't do. And so when you say out loud the don't do, of course you're like, yeah, I know that, right? But then you catch yourself in the middle of, celebrating and finding yourself saying some of the phrases that come up here. And so reminding yourself not to do a don't do that's simple. We end up doing this kind of thing all the time. Yeah. We end up claiming credit that's not ours.
I want to just underline the one point that you made, because I don't think we've really underlined this one in a long time, if ever, really, in the couple of years of doing these live conversations, much less the 4 years of doing the field notes. There is a phrase I've heard, and I know some of the top leaders in our firm don't like it because they would say that admired leader behaviors are not necessarily common sense. But people will often say, if they hear somebody talk about admired leader behaviors, often if we're giving presentations or coaching people, we're getting into that content, and of course it's in our main platform. But even in the insights and things that are in the field notes that we talk about on Lead Better, you might have that feeling to say, good reminder, that's common sense. And I've heard it said this way: well, if it is common sense, it is not common practice.
Right.
Okay, good enough point. But then what we find is that if you really look at a lot of the admired leader behaviors, people will say, that's a good reminder, that's common sense. Right. You go, well, yeah, tell me about that. Not even getting to the point of whether you do it or not. But when you say, like, well, how many people do you think really understand that idea? And if you just had a 20-second conversation, you'd really be like, well, probably hardly any. And you'd be like, oh, yeah. So it's not common sense.
Right. How many people would agree on the cadence of what is good on how often you should call your mother? Right?
Yeah, often.
I think if we threw that poll question, how often should you call your mother? Everyone would basically find a median that says once a week is how often you should call your mother.
That would be that. Okay.
Right?
What did they call? They call that the Schelling point, I think, in the literature.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, in fact, if we just said, all right, Mikey, 5 years from today, you and I need to wherever we are in the world, we're going to get together. And if that's only the information that we had, was that we were going to get together 5 years ago from right now. Right now it's 3:04 Eastern time on August 21st, 2025. And if we were going to chart that, where would we end up going if we had no other information?
Right. I would go to this Zoom location.
Yeah, right. Well, people would say, it could be Grand Central Station in New York. Like, what would be the most common sense thing that you might say? Right. Same there with call your mother. And you're making me feel bad because I often call my mother multiple times a week, but I've been on the road for a couple of days and I haven't. So.
It's because you anticipated the next thing. It's like when we think the most common behavior, the best behavior that we should have is we should all call our moms at least once a week. And then we evaluate, it's been 3 weeks and my actual cadence is closer to once a month, right? When you actually start examining your real behaviors in comparison to what you think is normal or good or the best, we're oftentimes lacking. And it's until someone points it out to you. It's until someone does a study that says, oh, look at these admired behaviors and all of the behaviors, like real actual practices that they have in common with each other that might seem super obvious to everybody, but this cohort of admired leaders is actually practicing it, then it's like, oh, yeah, some of those things are. And then when you know, okay, there's these 150 simple practices that I should be doing, most of us would kind of turn our back on it and be like, I'm just going to be good all the time, right? I'm just going to always be good. Like, I'm just going to, the things that I know to be good, the things that my mom taught me, I'm just going to start doing those things. And, instead, no, let's actually pay attention to these real behaviors and take them one by one. And adding behaviors to your life is tough, right?
Yes, to actually make them natural and
right.
in that. So now
how much more tough is taking a behavior away, like this one in particular? Like, if you've got this.
And I actually was like I was going into this field note, and again, just we're going to start diving into it. Be careful not to celebrate yourself when celebrating others. I was like, okay, this is good. I can skip this one because that's not me. And then I'm reading the examples, and I'm like, yeah.
Right. Some of these things in the way that I talk to my children, I was like, I always knew you
particularly.
Could do that. Yeah, that very first one.
So that, in fact, the way that you just said that, like, I always knew you could do that, takes away from the specialness of what they did, because it brings the focus back on you. So you just encapsulated it. And there's a list of these statements. I always knew you were capable of great things. Your success is making me look good. When you follow the right strategy, good things happen. All I had to do was set you free to do great work. I surrounded you with the talent, and look what you did with it, right? So there's more in the field note, and some of them are very subtle, and you start to realize, leaders do this all the time, because they want to absolutely make sure if they're going to celebrate you and praise the thing that you did, well, don't forget that I had something to do with that.
Yeah, well, if I'm a junior leader and I know that I need to promote myself in some way because no one else is going to promote me, right? I'm going to look for subtle ways to kind of inject, yeah, this is great for you, but I just kind of want to say why it is that I had a part in it as well.
Yeah.
And when we hear other people do that, we're like, I hate that version of self-promotion. But then those people who say that out loud, aren't they the ones who are getting the promotions? And it drives you nuts because it's like that bad behavior seems to be rewarded, right? So maybe
I am going to tell people about the great way that you phrased this around about your kids earlier, but I will tell them that I set you up to say it that way. I'm going to make sure that that's the evident thing. So I don't know about the folks watching, but this is sort of an invitation to say, maybe take this one a little more seriously, because I think we're probably the majority. It'd be rare to find the leader that doesn't do this a little bit. That would be my inclination. So now, let me ask you this, though, because the field note then gets to, well, why did they do it? Well, because they're trying to make sure that you know what they did. But it says that oftentimes that those that do this are, well, how did it phrase it? Shoot, I'm not finding it this second. But it was really, it leads to that aspect of, there is an insecurity in them, right? Yeah. So it takes a very secure leader that doesn't need praise, that doesn't need to remind you. And so you have to examine yourself a little bit. If you find yourself always including that, I knew you could do it. Finally, you listened to me on this. See what happens when you take some good coaching. Whatever it is, you're pounding people down. And what you'd really like for them to feel is you don't want them to feel like you're stunned that they succeeded. You do want them to feel like you knew that you were their fan, right?
Right.
But that's a good thing. We talk about the fan as sort of principle in general, and nobody when finally the losing team wins 3 games in a row is up there going like, well, finally, if my cheers made all the difference. No, the team did it, right? But your fanness was part of the vibe, the spirit that was necessary. So I think that it's a.
It seems to me that those coaches who are in a spot that they are deserving of a lot of accolades, and it's obvious, those are the ones who have the tendency to like defer the praise to the. And I think it's the line you were probably looking for is leaders who perceive themselves as being under-recognized and unappreciated.
Yeah, under-recognized and unappreciated.
Yeah. They're the likely culprits of this because maybe they haven't had the success that they thought they deserved.
Yeah.
And then when success does come to the team, they feel like, okay, I need to give myself flowers because no one else is giving them to me.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Now, I don't
And by
know.
the way, it's that obvious. Like, could you imagine going to one of your daughter's plays with a bouquet of flowers for yourself?
Right.
Right. But that's essentially what this is. Like, and until we make it kind of ridiculous, we don't recognize, oh, this is really bad
Yeah.
behavior. Right.
Now, now I'm going to also be listening for it. Like if anybody like shockingly said anything nice about something that maybe you and I did, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, are they claiming credit? How did they? You can get too deep in this. Like just take people's praise. Like
Yes.
you just as leaders, we should be offering compliments accurately.
Yes.
And the world is starved for appreciation. So it's a very good thing to
Yes.
be exuding it. And
You know-
if you start to panic because you're like, well, am I phrasing this right? Well, just make it a net thing that you're going to show this sort of fanness to the world and to people in authentic ways. But I'm going to be more attentive to it now because of this field note, not only giving it, but also how I'm receiving it.
Right.
And seeing just how it lands. And does that really affect my mindset? It might.
Yeah. The last point, I knew you'd be successful the first time I spoke with you. That's another version of it, but it's come at me not as a compliment. It's come at me as a criticism like this before, and it's just as painful. I had someone just about a year ago recognize of like how I had shifted in some of the things that I had been thinking about, and they were really disappointed with the way that I had shifted some of my thinking. And they said to me several years ago, I didn't say it out loud, but I said to myself, I knew that you would go this way, right? I knew you would. And
your loyalty to the San Francisco sports teams has always been a little bit in question.
But it was the sting of that was like, oh, that's really weird. Not only are you saying that I've disappointed you, but you're also saying that it was super obvious to you that you
foresaw
would
it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so, which just took me out of it completely. At that point, it was a very different conversation. And I turned them off. And whatever kind of feedback they were giving me, the fact that they had injected themselves into the center of it at that point was just like, I remember responding like, I'm done with this conversation. Like, I don't know how to go on if you're going to make this. And I didn't say it that way, but they were. And it really didn't hit me until I read this last bullet point just now.
Right.
You can inject yourself into other people in the way that you give criticism as well. And it's just as ineffective.
Right. Well, think about this one as an admired leader behavior. I don't think it is listed in our catalog because we have over 100 behaviors that are in our main platform, and then there's about 400 or 500 that are in just the literature in the firm.
Not as powerful because it's a don't do. Like I think all the do ones are the most powerful.
Those jump out at people, certainly. Yeah. And sometimes the ones that are not in our main platform, it's just they're more specific to certain kind of scenarios, right? That might apply to certain leaders. And so our coaches can use them as they're working one-on-one with many of the world's top leaders. But the principle of how we would interact with those, and by the way, if you're wondering the difference, and it probably is worth underlining this, both for field notes and the others, is sometimes there are themes or pieces of those behaviors that are in the field notes. There's no doubt. If you actually have gone through our regular program, been coached, gone to one of our events, whatever, the field notes become more powerful. They don't become less powerful. Now, the interesting thing is that we would kind of say, these are best practices. They might be insightful. They might be good advice. But when you get something that we would put into a category of an admired leader behavior, it's the kind of thing that says it's not just like, well, here's an idea, right? To meet that criteria, you have to see this in multiple leaders in multiple kinds of scenarios. And it's one of those ones where it's usually a slap in the head, where you've looked at it, you've thought about a problem, you've coached this person, you read about this, you've been studying this, and suddenly you'll be like, wait, she does that. I saw that person do it this way. Here was this. And then now that I start seeing it, I'm saying, oh, I see it everywhere. Yeah. And then you go, how did I miss this before? And so this would be one of those where maybe you could start paying attention, and probably the really great leaders that you might run across, truly admired leaders, probably are not celebrating themselves. They're finding a way to make sure that the celebration is just about you. The question then, and we say to somebody become an admired leader, is it just practiced by multiple people? Is there a universality to it, that it wouldn't be true only for astronauts? It would be true for across time and across context. It would work in different countries, and if it was true 1,000 years ago. Those are the things we look at and say, this is probably one that we want to say, boom, wisdom. Let's go think about this one. But the way that we would then tell somebody to work on that behavior is not as a technique, not as a tactic, but as a way of building it into your character. That would be one of the beautiful things about this behavior, which is it's a don't do, but it's one to start wiring your own attention to with your own kids, because your kids are not going to come up to you in 6 months and say, you know, I've noticed that you've stopped taking slight credit when you've praised me. They'll never say it. They won't even know it. But I think the impact on them will be profound.
Yes. Yes. And they would be a good practice cohort, not with them. We're diminishing that the behavior is any less important to your family than it is to your colleagues. It's probably more important, but they are a good low impact practice cohort for you.
Indeed.
So do it. Right.
All right. Thank you, Mikey.
Thank you. Nice to talk, and we'll talk again tomorrow.
Great.
Bye now.